For those of you who just came in, I'm Tony. I work on the Simpsons comics and Bart Simpson comics. And you want to tell them what you do?
I'm Chris Baldwin, and I do a science fiction comic called Space Trawler, which I put online and self-publish. And I also write and draw for Mad Magazine.
Oh, cool. Good, great. I was rejected. I applied for the position of editor-in-chief at Mad Magazine. The only reason I mention this is because I had the most awesome cover letter imaginable. I just wrote a cover letter, you know, like in the right format, with name and address. And I had a friend at DC who told me to apply. He said, just write something funny in your cover letter. So I wrote, you know, a nice cover letter, and I went, Dear Mad Magazine, duh, 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 paid vacation, duh, 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 promotion, duh, duh, sincerely Tony DeGraw. That's all I wrote, but I didn't get the gig.
What kind of response did you get?
I got a form rejection.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, man, you deserve better than that. Damn it!
Put in a good word for me.
Yeah. Hey guys, there's this guy.
But getting back to your question about doing illustrations for RPG games, I also work in RPG games, and they always need illustrators. And the great thing about working for them is they will almost always pay something, because it's not like comics where in comics a lot of times it'll be like, well, we'll cut you a percentage deal, and then there's really no money. In RPGs, they have to spend the money because there's no down the road for an illustrator in RPGs. They either have to spend the money or they're not going to have an RPG with any pictures in it. So, you know, I would just do some samples and then post them on your DeviantArt portfolio and then send around the link. And go to rpg.net. They have a forum there. Always looking for freelancers there. And you can also post your link there and say, hi, you know, I'm an artist and I'm looking for work in this field. Here are some of my pictures. You can post the pictures right on the message board. And people will look at it, and, you know, there's always guys looking for spot art illustration for RPGs. Always. It's constant. I do RPG writing, and there are always guys just looking for words. Just constant flavor text of like, oh, the dwarf has a sword, and there's an orc, and there's a guy with a hat, and there's some trees, and it points this way, and there's a bucket of gold. So,
I've had days like that.
really?
Yeah.
Dwarves and a tree and a pointing and a bucket of gold.
Yeah, the hat is very important. And so,
Guy with the hat.
Yeah. It is important not to do too much free work, I would say. A lot of people are like, oh, this is how you'll get your name, you'll get experience, people know you, is do free work for me, and it's kind of, and it's, you know, when you're starting, sometime a little bit, and then once you get going, then either something very specific or causes that you want to support, like, you know, a charity or a small comic convention or different things, but in general, it won't help you to do free work.
The exposure would have to be insanely high.
Yeah.
You know, and then usually if it's insanely high, well, there's got to be some money involved. I mean, you wouldn't work for Mad Magazine for free. You'd be like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You guys are a huge company, you know.
And half the time they have a budget. They just haven't budgeted you. So, anyways, so a little.
Unless you're just starting out. I mean, unless your resume, it has nothing on it, you know, I mean, and if you're doing your own comic, that's a perfectly valid credit. I mean, you know, and thanks to DeviantArt, you have instant portfolio. So I started taking questions already. I don't know.
Oh yeah, no, I got the sense of that.
So if anybody has any questions about freelancing and stuff, just fire away.
Is that the topic? Am I in the right room?
It's like working for the big companies.
No, this is getting paid to do what you already love, working with companies.
Yeah.
Wait. No, wasn't this, am I the right, I'm thinking the next convention I'm at.
Oh, it'll happen soon. Just settle down.
I'm based in Seattle, so I'm doing sort of a 3-convention tour, and then immediately doing the 8th in San Francisco. So they've all melted together. I think that was a.
I can sympathize. At my peak, I used to do 35 cons a year, and I had a month where I did a con week in a different state that wasn't my state, and I was completely fried by the end of it.
Yeah. Takes its toll.
Yeah.
We'd be happy with like 5 cons.
Yeah, it's interesting because cons are becoming less and less of a thing you really need to do in terms if you have your own comic, because it costs so much money to go, travel, lodging, food. You're talking $300 to $1,000 just to do the con. You're better off just taking that and putting it into a web advertising. You'll get more eyes on your website that way. So I've cut way back. This year I only did like 5 cons. This is like my last con I did.
Where if you're self-published and you're just pushing your own book, then you have these direct sales, and so it's, I, for the most part, break even or make a profit on every convention.
Yeah, it kind of depends upon your, if you're an artist, see, I'm a writer, I can't draw sketches for $20 a pop. See, most of my friends who are artists, they go to a con, they can make $3,000, no problem. I mean, that's like a bad con for them.
It's not one of them.
No, you could do it. You work for Mad Magazine. Just throw that. I put a 20-foot sign that says, "I work for Mad Magazine. Come get a sketch."
Maybe. It's important to have self-esteem in this career because no one does, and we'll rise to the top. Well, since that's the topic of the panel,
All right.
I also write and draw. Oh no, I don't write. I illustrate children's educational stories for a company in the Southwest.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah. And I can tell you, so the ways I've gotten these 2 big gigs. The other one isn't really a well-known gig. It's someone in schools and stuff that pays well, which is what matters to me. But it was a reader of my comic. I do a webcomic. They found it, they like it. They were an editor at this, and they needed illustrators. So she was like, "Oh," and gave me a call, and suddenly I was doing this freelance work. For the Mad work, I used to do this. Well, this is my 3rd webcomic, but there's an editor at Universal Syndicate that really likes my work, but he was just one editor among many. He was one of the top, but they need to bring a strip on. They need consensus. So he couldn't get me in Universal. But he was having lunch with someone from Mad, and they were looking for new blood. And the guy was like, "Oh, you know anyone funny?" And Don was like, "Yeah, I know this funny guy. Give him a call." And so they they both came to me.
Yeah, it's all about networking, and getting your name out there. So that's one of the things that conventions can be great for. It's just meeting people, even if you don't sell much or anything. If you make a lot of good contacts that leads to other work, then you've made your money that way.
Is Simpsons looking for humor writers?
We'll talk. No, they always are kind of looking for people, but they have a weird sort of how should I put this? They have a backlog of stories right now.
Okay.
So a huge buffer apparently. It kind of like caught them unawares. From what I understand, I'm not totally sure. I'm not trying to say anything negative, but they literally emailed all their freelancers at one point and said, "Please don't send us anything for a little while. we're a little backed up. We have to catch up on the stuff we have." So, but hopefully, I think that's finally clearing out. Maybe by the end of the year. I don't know. But yeah, they're kind of always looking for funny people. I'll see if I can point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's hard though to get into places like Mad and Bongo. I don't know why. It just sort of, you either fall into it or you don't. For me, for Bongo, I got the gig because a girl I went to high school with works for Matt Groening and works for Bongo, and they were looking for writers. And she said, "Oh, my friend Tony's a comedy writer. Can he pitch?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And I got in.
Picture it kind of like, so you want to date. You're single and you want to date. And you go to a bar, and there's all these people, and you're like, they're probably all losers. There's no credentials. How do you know? They're going to come up to you, and they're going to say, "Hey, I'm great." And you're like, "Yeah, well, who's going to vouch for you?" Whereas if you go to a party that your friend is hosting, and someone's at the party, obviously, they must know your friend, or know a friend of your friend. So you're kind of like, well, they're probably, that's something to go on.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, yeah.
That's,
So that's why you got to get in the scene So even if you just show up at a couple of shows, because the first thing any editor wants to do is make sure you're not insane, because I don't have to tell you, 99.9% of the fans are wonderful people, just like me and you. But that tiny little minority are a little unstable, and you've got to weed them out, because editors get them, and you get creepy emails and letters, and dead rabbits mailed to you, and stories written on paper bags, and I mean, you just can't imagine what editors get. But most people are normal, but then a new writer who's a little off is really emotionally invested in something they wrote or drew. They don't understand that professionals, they just write and crank out stuff all the time, and so they're not as emotionally invested. They're professional. They have like a professional distance between their product and themselves. They have stuff that they're really emotional about that they might keep or self-publish, but then they have their professional work, and they know, hey, I'm selling this, and if they reject it, I'm okay with that. Sometimes new people can't deal with that. There's something that goes off, and it's like, that's when the calls start, and that's what editors are really, really afraid of. So you have to separate yourself from that tiny minority by saying, oh yeah, if you get a chance to look at it, nothing invested here, I'm not going to call you a bug you. You got to follow the guidelines. The Writer's Market Guide is a good source for that. You get a Writer's Market Guide reference book from the bookstore, and it will tell you everybody's submission guidelines, if they even take submissions. And it'll say right there, you got to send a query letter. They don't want you to send anything. They just want you to send a letter that says, do you need anything, basically? And here are some of my credentials. Can I send you something? And that may be all they want. And they may reject that, and you just have to deal with it, because you may send it at a time where they don't need anything.
But if they ask for that and you send them a manuscript, they're like, this is unsolicited, and toss it. Don't even open it.
Yep. I had a friend who worked at one of the major comic book companies, and he said, I was in his office, and he had a big pile, a slush pile, and the slush pile is just stuff that came in. And in his slush pile, it wasn't even everything that came in. It was the stuff that came in that got filtered through the process, so everybody in the pile had followed the process. Then his assistant had gone through it, made it a little smaller, kept putting it in this pot. And he was supposed to read it. And he goes, at some point, I'll just despair and push that whole thing into the trash can. And it's just because he's a busy guy and he just doesn't have the time. Now, at some point, he needs somebody. He might go over there and reach for something, and it might be yours. But that's the reality. That's the chance you're taking. That's why you need to be sort of in the mix and know people. Because then when you send something, your editor's like, oh, this is your friend so-and-so? Oh, okay, well, let me take a look at it real quick. All right, we need somebody. That's what you're hoping for.
Yeah, now we're all depressed.
Yeah. So it's all very sad.
The best advice in writing or art is to get an office job. Just forget the whole thing.
But it can't happen. My friend Tommy was at a comic book convention with me, and the editor from DC Comics came over. He looked at his stuff. He said, did you draw this? He said, yeah. Gave him his card. He said, come to my office on Monday. I want to talk to you about drawing Batman. They walked away, and next week, my friend went to the office. He was drawing Detective Comics.
Oh, yeah.
It's rare, but, it happens. But that's why you got to be ready. You got to be ready for that moment if it happens to you. You got to be, you got to look. My friend, he's a top-notch artist. He's a good guy. If you saw his art, you'd say, oh, yeah, I'd hire this guy to draw Batman. There'd be no question. The stuff he had on his table. He didn't have, stuff from 2 years ago that wasn't that great that, you're flipping through his portfolio that he'd go, oh, yeah, don't look at that. No, he didn't have any of that stuff on his table. He only had stuff that he was selling. And that's what he would sell, and he still does. He sells prints of his artwork because, people like it.
Yeah.
But do you guys have any specific, more pointed questions, perhaps? Or shall we ramble some more? about working for big companies? Is everybody who's here a writer? Both, right? Okay, and then artists. You got artists, couple artists. All right. Are you other artists? You're looking to break into some of the comic book companies, maybe, or mostly indie stuff? So when you say indie stuff, you want to do your own thing.
Dark Horse for a second.
Oh, SLG, sure. So you're looking to do non-traditional, sort of non-superhero kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, there's actually a huge market for that, even beyond comic books. I mean, booksellers are getting into graphic novels, and they want a certain look, and they sure as heck don't want superheroes. My neighbors are book publishers, and they like, all their graphic novels are like all done by hipster girls who draw these cute little comics where the girl has a cat and she has like the librarian glasses and she has a cute boyfriend and there's no like violence or anything in it. It's just a fun, cute comic that maybe you market to women and girls, and that's
insensitive men. I like
rights. Rights.
Superheroes are violent. Vigilante justice is a really bad idea.
Okay. Vigilante justice is bad, and here's why. But yeah, I mean, for that I would recommend, as I always recommend to everybody, start a webcomic. Because it's a very low bar. You can start getting your name out there. And, it's worldwide access. And anybody could stumble upon it at any time, and it could turn into a phenomenon.
And some nice things about, I've been doing webcomics since '96, and there are a few things like it sets you up with a schedule. If you're like, hey, I'm going to post 1 page a week, then you have readers who are expecting 1 page a week. It's almost like becomes an assignment, so it gives you sort of a false sense that you should accomplish something. And also just the practice. When people say, how do you do a webcomic? I say, well, do a webcomic and then you'll learn. It's kind of, it's really easy. You can, you can do it on, pretty much any website. WordPress is a good one, like blog sites. You just, post a page as a post. And once you know that, you'll get sort of used to it. Maybe you'll put WordPress on your own site, and then you'll be, there's Comic Press, I could put that in there, and it will auto-update things, and and you start getting very fancy, but in the beginning, like, you don't want to get fancy in the beginning because no one cares about you. They don't. And you'll learn, and then you'll learn what you want out of these devices. You'll learn, this just simple WordPress isn't doing this, and this other thing does, and you'll start to develop your needs as well as figuring out how to meet those needs and how to write and draw. I did my first daily strip online. I did for 11 years, and the drawing just over the years just went up and up, and the writing I learned how to write humor. In the beginning, it was funny sometimes, sort of, and later it was funny more times, sort of. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can totally recommend WordPress too. I use them for both my sites. My webcomics are Superfrat at superfrat.com and the Webcomic Factory at thewebcomicfactory.com. And initially when I started doing webcomics about 2003. 8 years ago, was that long? We started Superfrat on sort of a regular website where we had to get a webmaster to write the code so you could click through the comic. And it was a bit clunky and a bit of a nightmare, and only the webmaster could update it. And when things went down, I'd go into a panic, and we didn't update regularly. It was a nightmare. Now WordPress is much more user-friendly. It's cut, paste, point, click. There are buttons to do the things that webcomic people always do, like update, and if you make a mistake on your word balloon, you have to go back and correct it. It's really easy to go right back in, after you correct it in, like, say, Adobe Photoshop, go right back in, repost it, boom, it just replaces, and it just slides it in there. The archives are automatic now, just automatically archives it. In the old days, you had to put like a special, you had to name the file a specific way or else the program wouldn't sort the archive correctly. Now you can name it whatever you want. WordPress and Comic Press, which I also use, archives it. On the Webcomic Factory, we have over a dozen different webcomics, and they're all sorted individually in their own archive. So you can click on, you could watch it on the front page, or you could just click on one comic and just read through just it.
And it used to be if you wanted to post at midnight, you'd have to upload the file at midnight. And now you just tell it, well, at midnight, put this up.
Yeah, the scheduling's so great. I mean, that's how I can come to the con this weekend. I'm scheduled all the way out through Monday. So I'm like, yay! It's like a vacation for me. And all I have to do is my various social media promotion, and I'm good to go.
What's the topic again?
Working for companies.
Getting paid, yeah.
But working for companies is great. My advice is if you're going to work for a company, just go into it with your eyes open. Don't give a company like your greatest idea ever that you're so emotionally attached to that you don't want to see destroyed, because companies are there to make money, and you can't, no matter how nice they are in the company, and they'll be very nice, there are nice people that work at companies, they're not, your best friend. They don't understand when you're selling something to them, a company's going to use it to make money. That's what they do. And if they think that by taking your nice little comic about, I don't know, about a man who makes chairs, he's a little old man, and he's friendly to everybody, and they turn that into a bikini model who turns into a werewolf, that's something you have to live with if you sell it to the company. That's what they do. They're trying to make money.
Yeah, they're not immoral. That's important. They're not immoral. They're amoral. Like, there isn't good or bad. They're simply, they're there to make a profit. Hollywood's the best example. They have an idea, and they're going to get stars because stars sell. They're going to, they don't want to do indie films because they don't sell. They will take a story that you've written and they will adapt it into the formulas that people are used to because people are used to them and they like them, and so that will make money. And so it's not that they're ruining it, they're just turning it into that medium, and so
And everybody has their price, okay? So let's face it, if you can get enough money from your wonderful project to live comfortably the rest of your life, I think you might think twice before you say, no, you can't ruin it. To give you an example, my webcomic we were in negotiations to possibly make it into a $60 million movie. And, the producers came to me and there was some negotiation, and then they said, well, we're going to get these writers to write a treatment. They took the treatment, they changed all the characters' names, they changed all their various powers and traits. It wasn't the only thing they took was the name and the concept. That was it. They completely rewrote everything from the ground up, and it was awful. Now, if they had offered me the right amount of money, yeah, sure, take it, I don't care. I'm going to live comfortably, I'll make a new comic, what do I care? But they didn't offer me enough money, so I said, no, you guys are screw-ups. I said, you either got to do it the right way, or you got to pay me money. You can't pay me peanuts and then ruin it. You got to pay me gold and then ruin it. Then you could go ruin it. But, it depends on what you want to do. And it's also not a project that was it wasn't a personal story about my triumph over adversity. It was just a funny, cool story that I wrote, and they wanted to buy it, kind of. That's not to say that people in companies don't have tremendous egos, especially in Hollywood. They do. They're insanely huge egos. Most of the producers I work with, I can't even talk to them. I literally can't even have a conversation with them because they're that, with some exceptions. The producer I'm working with now, he's a very personable guy. I can call him on the phone and say, hey man, how's it going? Any movement on the project? No, that's cool. I'm looking for a director, blah, blah, blah. He's a great guy. Some of the other guys, I couldn't even talk to him. I said, you don't understand. If you use this treatment you wrote, my fans will hate you. Once they get word that you've completely changed all the characters, they'll boycott the movie. Do you really want the guys who are the fans of the comic to boycott the movie? That would be like all the fans of Captain America boycotting the Captain America movie. That can't be good press for the movie. They're like, no, we know what we're doing. So, that's just the reality of it. And like you said, it's not immoral, it's amoral. And sometimes it's insane.
So I had a thought for a topic relating to
cool.
the topic is so I have these two basic big freelance gigs that I work on. I mean, they're not too big, but they're the two main ones that I work on. And the children's illustration stories, they send me text. And depending on the writer, some are like, okay, I want this little kid who's like looking up at their mom while they're holding a sandwich, and there's a dog running by, and there's a car and a school in the background. Sometimes they get really detailed, or sometimes they're just like, oh, there's a kid looking at the mom. And it's straightforward work. I have no investment in it whatsoever. Like, I'm never going to see this book again. It's not going to be on bookshelves because it's directly sold to schools. It's not, like, I want to do a good job, but they say, here's what I want. I draw it. I don't think about it whatsoever, and it's great, and it's a fine relationship. Whereas something like with Mad Magazine, they actually, the reason they have me on board is they value my creativity on sort of all the levels. So it's a lot. I still don't get invested. It's really important with freelance to not get too invested because it's not your project, especially if they're like Mad buys outright and this other company buys outright. So I own
Bongo
nothing.
too.
Yeah, they own it. So there's no reason for me to.
They're not your characters.
Yeah.
Homer Simpson's not my character.
Yeah.
Who am I to say, no, Homer wouldn't say that?
And I create these two characters for Mad, and they're not my characters. They own them, but it's more fun because I get to, I write these scripts, and and they actually, and they like me because they like my writing, they like my humor, and so they give me really good editorial feedback. They're like, oh, get rid of that panel and maybe change this wording. And it's generally good because they've been working in the humor industry for years and years, but they don't really, in the first case, it's sort of, they have a vision and they want me to do it, and this is what they expect. With Mad, it's more that they want my vision within what they've generally seen me do, because they know that, I do that well. And
yeah, and with The Simpsons, obviously they want a Simpson-esque, story, which has its own limitations. I know that the artists, for most of the Simpsons comics, they have a very specific, what is that called? There's a specific term for the models that they use. What is
iconic?
No, there's a specific. I can't. They give you like a whole color swatch for all the characters, and you have to draw the Simpsons to look like the Simpsons. There can be very little deviation. Now there are some exceptions. They do some specialized Simpsons comics like the Treehouse of Horror. That's when they go off mark or off model. I guess that's the term I'm looking for. Anyhow, it's the same thing with writers. They want it to be, you can't get too graphic, you can't do this, but you can do a lot within that context, and that's what they're hiring for you. They're hiring for your creativity. But I also, too, on the lines of just doing, something that you're not really invested in, it doesn't mean that it's going to be bad. It just means you eventually, as a freelancer, gauge how much time you spend on something. So something that you agonize on for days and hours, that's something you're really working on. Whereas if you're getting paid a certain rate, it's not cost effective for you to agonize over it. Like, I do these posts on a comedy site, and I get paid, sometimes $20 a post for 300 words. I can't spend all day on a post like that. I gotta just knock it out, and if it's good enough, boom, tag it. Give me my $20. I can't, afford to be agonizing on that all day. But then, for something like The Simpsons, they pay a phenomenal rate. So, I'm gonna, give them a good first draft. They're gonna come back to me with notes. I'm gonna agonize over the notes. I might go back and forth with them 2 more times, depending. They like to do a little note on The Simpsons comic scripts. CBF. Could be funnier. So that's what I get. So I just down the script. CBF. Damn it! I gotta be funny.
Yeah.
It's only The Simpsons.
Could you guys talk about, you both have multiple projects. Could you guys talk about how you juggle, the deadlines, time management?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
But before the deadline, do it.
Yeah. I still love the fact that he was just like, oh yeah, that's a good one. It's like he was about to say, yeah, I still haven't figured that out.
Leave yourself lots of buffer room. like when I'll talk to an editor or whoever hired me, I'm not going to give them like, if it'll take me 6 hours to do something, I'm going to tell them it'll take me 9 hours. You know?
Yes.
Yes, the Scotty principle.
Multiply everything by a factor of 4.
Because you have to. Otherwise, they'll be like, oh, okay, I'll call you at 6, and I can't wait to read it. And you'll be like, oh, crap. And if something goes wrong, you know, maybe you get a phone call, or, you know, you want to give yourself some buffer. Now, most people understand to some extent that, you know, their creative talent needs some time, and so they get flexible. You build up credibility after a while. Like, I've been writing for That's My Crap over a year, and That's My Crap is, you know, they're just one-shot, you know, funny bits that he likes to put up for his t-shirt company. So he's real flexible. Some weeks I just forget to send him something, and because it's just, you know, so off the cuff, I just sometimes forget to do it. I get busy. And then he'll send me an email, oh, you didn't send me anything. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll send it to you right now. I'll send it to him. You know, other editors are going to be much more precise, and you're going to have to do, you know, more. But what you want to do is prioritize things. For me, it's all about money. I've got a client, my top client right now is having me write for a Brazilian toy company, and we're doing cartoons based on the toys, and they're paying me the most money. So, F everybody else when they call, because I drop everything I'm doing to talk to them, because they're paying the most. And if anybody else balks, I'll just be like, well, I'm getting paid a lot more money to do this, so see ya.
Yeah, match it.
Yeah, match it. Yeah, pay me more, and you'll get my attention. That's the one great thing about freelancers. When you're in demand, you know, you can start turning the screws to them. Say, I'm going to need more money to do this. I had to tell one of my clients on Friday, I can't talk to you this weekend because you're just taking up too much of my time. She was emailing me and texting me about this project, and she didn't have all the notes ready. I said, look, just take the weekend, get your head together, or I'm going to end up charging you all weekend to do nothing. And she said, okay. Because she didn't want to pay me money to do nothing. And, you know, her project was not ready for me to script it. I scripted it 3 times. She read it to the client, and the client was like, after I'd done 3 drafts, the first draft was as close to what the client actually wanted. The other 2 drafts took it further and further away. And so we read him the 3rd draft, and he was like, I don't want this. This is what I want at all. And I was just like, see, you're going the wrong way. You gotta, you know. So sometimes you have to do that with a client.
On a smaller scale, I mean, I have my webcomic, and so I, you know, often am working on that the day before, as the way of webcomics. But for the children's illustration, each book has a contract. You know, it's like 7 pages or 11 pages, and they're like, we want the inks by this date and the colors by this date. And then it's, I mean, once you've done a couple books for a company like that, you're like, oh, it's going to take about this amount of time. So, you know, if they want it on Monday, I can start it Sunday night and finish it, or if I have time, I try to do it ahead of time. But you get a sense of how long it's going to take, and just get it done. And with Mad, sort of the same thing. If they have an issue coming out and they want it by a date, they say do it by this date. And from a few experiences, they know that if they're like, can we have it in like 3 days, that I can pump it out for them. But other than that, they're very flexible. They're just like, and they know they're not going to pay me until I turn in the work. So they're like, you know, get it done. I do it within a month or something, you know, just sort of. Meanwhile, I'm submitting more scripts to them. That's another thing actually is interesting. For Mad Magazine, they buy at this point. I'm getting better at it. At this point, maybe like 1 in every 5 comics I submit to them, and that's a pretty good rate. Actually.
Now, do you pitch or do you script the whole thing and draw it?
Or? They're okay with any format, but my comics are often, even though they're very text-based, it's also the expressions and the characters and their emotions that convey a lot of the humor. And so they always respond better if it's thumbnailed, and so I always send them thumbnailed with lettering. And you know, it's a fair amount of work, and 1 out of every 5 is, you know, a fair amount of work to do 5 proposals, and sometimes it takes a few drafts for them to buy one, but you know, the rate is good enough that overall it's worth it. So. Yeah.
You also don't want to turn in things too fast, because then editors get the impression that you're blowing through it, even if you're inspired. A few times I handed in stuff way too fast for The Simpsons, like, because I'm a huge Simpsons fan. I literally watch The Simpsons almost every single day. And I was turning in stuff like, oh, you gave me a story, I'm going to work on it right now. And I'd be done that night, and I'd turn it in the next day, and they'd be like, what? How did you start working on this already? Like, and I'd just be like, I was just excited. I said, and they got the wrong impression, like they thought I was just rushing through it, which I guess I kind of was, but at the same time, I was also very excited about it. So, like, the story didn't change that much when I, rewrote it, but I learned to, like, sort of pull back on the brakes and go, okay, even though I knocked this out, like, the night I got the assignment, I'm just going to sit on it for 3 days, just so the editor thinks I, agonized over it.
It's all perception.
Yeah, and your client, even like client work too, you sometimes want to just like throw it over on the side and say, yeah, I'll hand it in a few weeks.
And
Just,
there's also always a chance with stuff like that where suddenly you're like, oh, it would be great if I tweaked this a little bit, and then you're like, oh, and then you have a chance rather than...
Yeah, sometimes it's good to go back and look at your stuff, let it gel a little bit.
I like having a buffer on my comments, because then I can be like, oh, this text on that channel is better, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when you're doing stuff on the side, it's also good to be, like, I got my Webcomic Factory Super Frat post and promotion down to about, I could probably do it in about 3 or 4 hours tops. And I could there are ways for me to cut corners to go even tighter, but that would include me updating the site for tomorrow and promoting the posts that are up today. But, I have it as efficient as I can get it, so I can then move on either the rest of my day to play video games or actually do some work. So the nice thing about being a freelancer and working with companies, though, is because when you need a day off, all you got to do is not look for work. If you don't have any, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that sucks is when you need work, like around Christmas. There ain't no work around Christmas, at least for me. I don't know about you. Freelance work usually dries up for me right around Thanksgiving. It doesn't pick up until like January.
My stuff is just sort of general, happens here and there.
Here and there?
Yeah, I haven't seen a pattern. I try not to think about it. But it's not, it's not, these are, occasional, like, mad, it's like 4 times a year or something, so it's and the other one is maybe 3 or 4 times a year.
I'm so jealous you're working at Mad. I love Mad. It's awesome magazine.
Yeah, they're fun. They're a fun group, too. If you ever want to visit the Mad offices, when you're in New York, just give them a call, say, hey, can I have a tour of the office, and they'll give it to you.
Really?
It's their policy, but no one knows about it, so no one does it.
Yeah, I thought that wasn't true. They
No.
did that on The Simpsons. Bart asked for a tour, and they wouldn't give it to him, and then he laughed. All crazy.
Yeah, I missed that one. So you do kind of have to call ahead, because if they're busy, they're like, well, we can't do anything for you.
Bart just got there on the wrong day.
Yeah. Yes. Fate was against him.
Any other questions, perhaps, or inquiries to working in comics or web comics? Really no big companies to work for in web comics yet. So far, corporations haven't really discovered how to exploit that.
Oh God, there was a big discussion today about with some cartoonists about comicsology.
Oh, interesting.
And they're like, it's great, we're doing, and like, but these are cartoonists who actually are like have numbers.
Oh, okay.
And it's not doing so great. It's so.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't, early on, I come from the print comics, that's where I started, and so I watched the progress from print to webcomics, like, I heard the initial rumblings, webcomics, that's interesting, what's going on there? And, then it would disappear for a while, and then these guys who are into the downloadable comics, which is slightly different from webcomics, it's sort of the same, and they were talking about it like, this is going to be a new thing that revolutionizes everything. People are only going to read off the computer, and they're going to download it into the special program. And I just thought, that's kind of clunky. I have to download it into a special program. Why can't they just put it on a website? That would make more sense to me. And yeah, so we were, we were in some of the early meetings for, was it Comicology? And there was another one too, Wowio. In the early meetings for Wowio, we were just kind of like, I don't know if this is going to work. So I still don't know if it's going to work. I don't know. The webcomic model seems to me to be the ideal, It's just sort of there. It's free. You got an iPad. You can flip through it all day. Seems like the most efficient model to me. But what do I know? But when I first saw the guys from Penny Arcade selling T-shirts at $20 a pop, I was like, oh, I got to get out of print, man. This is insane.
Or when they now have 2 cons.
Yeah, those guys, they know.
I know.
Well, and you know what their secret is, that this business, super business graduate guy. Oh, you do know, yeah. Oh, you guys all know the story. That's because it's, webcomics. It's making the money is a business. It has nothing to do with comics. Like you gotta just know how to do it, how to network, how to sell. I'm crap at it. I do all.
Well, it's you know what it is for artists. They don't have the time. I mean, and I'm a writer.
Factor.
I have more time than an artist, but I still don't have time because I have to. I spend the last week of every month emailing and calling everybody I know in the world of comics trying to get a sponsorship for the Webcomic Factory. And so far I average about 2 small or 1 large sponsor a month. But it's tough. I mean, I had a guy on the hook and he was like, I love your site and I'm going to buy something. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like spending the money as he's emailing me these glowing recommendations. And then came time for the end of the month and I'm looking with my hands out and I am not getting a response from him, and I'm emailing. I'm like, yeah, I can help you with your banner, whatever you need, helpful emails. And then finally he came back and he was like, oh, I can't buy it this month. And I'm like, oh, I was counting that money. I was tasting that sweet, sweet cash. But it's tough, and that's why, those guys are lucky to have a business guy. If you can finagle yourself a business person to turn it into money, that's always good because they can just concentrate on that because it's a full-time gig. I could spend all month calling people for sponsorship. I wish I had the time, but I'd rather write and play video games.
Yeah. R. Stevens says he's not sure if anyone reads his comic Diesel Sweeties anymore, but they read his tweets and buy his socks, the socks that he sells. So.
No, they're reading Diesel's tweets. That's I see a lot of guys, and I'm always surprised when people read my stuff. Like, sometimes you get into these moments where you're like, God damn it, is anybody reading this thing? Where are the hits? Where are the people? And then I go to a con and I'm just like, oh, I'm Tony, I do this comic Superfrat. You do Superfrat? Oh my God, I read that all the time. And I'm just like, good. Please, click on an ad.
Is there any kind of organization or company that does sort of the business side of some webcomics?
Not yet.
Well, there's kind of prototypes. There's Project Wonderful. Do you know about that?
Yep.
It's sort of like the eBay of banner advertising. You know about that one? Yeah.
Talking about it in the marketing.
It's really good. I haven't made a tremendous amount of cash on it, but it's nice. It's steady and it trickles in.
And it's good to buy ads there as well. I found it's really good.
The ads are nice and cheap, and you do get a pretty good exposure. I'll do like a campaign where I could rig. First, I have a budget for my campaign, and I'll just throw like $10 at it, and I'll say to the program, spend 50 cents a day on ads. And what it'll do is it'll go across all of Project Wonderful, like webcomics, let's say. It'll bid a penny on every ad. And I'll have ads up on all these sites that maybe have, 100 readers. And if I get 1 click, then I pay the penny. And if somebody else comes in and outbids me for 2 pennies, I can rig it so it'll bid all the way up to 50 cents. But because all the ads are like that, a lot of times I'll get, for 50 cents, I might get 40 or 50 hits.
It's not based on clicks.
It's not?
No.
Oh,
No,
well,
time-
I don't know how to work it then.
Yeah, no, the websites, it's each one is like
It's
their,
like a
their
day
cost for
or-
the day, yeah, and you're paying for the time that your banner is shown, and so, but yeah.
I never understand it because after I'm done, I still get hits from the same site I bought an ad on, and I don't understand why that works. So
That's bizarre.
yeah, because I bought an ad on questionable content for one day because it's really expensive to buy an ad on questionable content. It's like the most popular webcomic on the web. It's 350,000 fans a day, and I still get hits from it today, and I don't know why. Because the ad only ran for one day. I had to take it down because I didn't quite know what I was doing, and it was only through Project Wonderful. So I don't know if I got mentioned in a forum or something, but I still get hits every once in a while. I get a hit from them. Wow, is my ad still floating around somewhere on questionable content?
Like that. I'm not an artist or technically a writer. I'm here with the press, more of a business and marketer myself.
Oh.
Well,
So
if-
maybe you could be the
Yeah, yeah. If you're looking to start that kind of company, there.
You just recruited yourself.
Yes, me too. Even the panelists. Yes.
There
Go
are some
trade places.
consortiums. I mean, the guy who does The Least I Can Do has Blind Ferret Entertainment, and he's sort of pulled together.
Shane and Garrity, who's here.
It'd be a novel idea.
Yeah, he's pulled together some of the big guys.
Oh, no, not
to
Shannon,
sort of
sorry.
pool their advertising power into one big entity.
Yeah.
The Cyanide and Happiness guy, right? That guy.
Yeah, I don't know who
He's
does
in
it. Yeah.
There's like 5 different comics, but they're all pretty
Girls
big. They
with-
have an established.
Girls with Slingshot. Does PvP with them?
I don't remember, but there's like 5.
No.
He is with the Penny RP guy. Like, he works in their,
Yeah, I know, but I was thinking that he was somehow associated with Blind Ferret.
The
but-
Tangent artist guys who are in the vendors room, they're like a very small version of that. They have like 3 or 4 webcomics together, and they have a thing.
Topodico represents my stuff. I'm part of the biggest webcomic, huge thing. But they're,
oh, that's where it would be coming from.
yeah.
Trying to figure it out all day.
Yeah, it's,
Is that like Drunk Duck or Webcomic Nation, like that kind of deal?
well, they questionable content and
Oh.
KP and stuff, and
Wow,
like
that's-
they're like all the
pretty
big
big.
names. Yeah, they're. You might know I did Bruno comic from '96 till.
Oh, yeah, I love
like,
Bruno. That was fun.
yeah. And then Little D from like 2003 or something. But yeah, Topodico they just sell. It's just it's like they sell stuff. But you know, if I have this T-shirt and it says librarian on it, and the A in the middle is an anarchy symbol, and people like that, and they want to buy it for themselves and for the librarian they know. And my readership isn't that big, but it's through Topodico, and so like all of questionable contents, all of his readers see my shirt, like all these people. So it's so I do okay sales because I'm with them, but they don't do any marketing for me. They don't do any business consulting.
So
they don't.
you cut them in on the shirt? Is that the deal?
Yeah, they take like a couple bucks for each item. So yeah.
That sounds better than the Cafe Press has a deal, but
Oh yeah,
It's
screw them. Yeah.
not a-
Testing out shirts on Cafe Press and that.
yeah, it's not. I mean, that was one of the early ones. So now the model is changed.
And it's kind of awful. I mean, you're paying them like $21 a shirt or something. So if you mark it up to $23, you can make $2 profit, and they're making all this money off.
But
of you.
they're also doing all the work. I mean, other than the creation.
Oh no, that
Yeah,
price
they're
is-
shipping it. They make it. They ship it.
No,
they
that's not
send you the
including
money.
shipping.
It's not?
It's awful. There are a few items they have. They have like these mini posters that are like $5 a piece. Okay, great. But because they ship and everything, and you don't have to do it, and that's good. But so the model I've been sort of doing is you do a pre-order for a shirt for like a week or two, and then you just go to there's plenty of cheap T-shirt presses, and so you can get sizes for everyone and colors, and you just figure out the shirt, and you get like 20 orders, and you say these are pre-orders, and as long as you can sell like 20 shirts, you can print enough to make a small profit, and then you can print some extras maybe with a profit and sell them on the site. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's
You gotta have a little room for inventory.
Yeah.
Because it does pile up.
That's how she does her book actually for, what is it? Great Space.
Yeah.
She took pre-orders for it for enough to pay for the order to bring books here.
Rob Balder has a great model. He does. The hell's the name of his comic now? not Order to Stick, the newer one. He started on Order to Stick. Oh gosh, I've totally drawn a blank on his comic. Anyhow, Rob has a model where his fans pay $3 a month for a year. And at the end of the year, he sends them the trade. So it's like you're paying for the trade in installments, and that includes shipping. So, and I can't think of the name of his comic. I'm totally wrong. Yes, that's it. Thank you. Earthworld. Yeah, Rob Balder. It's good comic. So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of models that you can use on the web to sell your stuff. I mean, anything you can figure out. You know, people take straight up donations. You know, for Randy at Something Positive, that worked out smashingly because I don't know. Have you guys heard that story about Randy? Randy at Something Positive was doing his comic and working and being like Randy does because he can be a curmudgeon sometimes, and that's like part of the comic. So he's working, and like one of his fans complained, "Man, there's so many typos in your word balloons. Why don't you fix them?" And Randy's like, "Well, you know what? I got to work for a living and do this web comic. Why don't you people raise $20,000 so I can quit my job and do this full time?" And they did.
Yeah. Kickstarter is big these days. Kickstarter for
I don't even think that was this was pre-Kickstarter.
That was pre-Kickstarter, yeah.
But yeah, in Kickstarter you could do stuff like
John
that.
Rosenberg did that with Goats, I think, as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think he did. And
yeah,
he
I
also
gotta do a
did
Kickstarter. That looks like fun. I haven't done the Kickstarter thing yet, but it looks cool. Well, the key is with Kickstarter, you don't necessarily have to print 5,000 books. You use the Kickstarter money to pre-sell your books. So,
I know
do.
most people are like, oh, I'm going to self-publish and I need to order like 2,500 books, so I need to raise the money. Here we go.
You don't have to print that many.
Well, that's probably from where they're ordering the books from. It's
Yeah.
not like print on demand, so they're like, okay, you need a large order. So.
Well, I mean, you need a large order to keep the price point down so you can make a profit, but
But
there are places that can work with you, and you can find some happy medium. If you're not going through Diamond Comics, all you got to do is make a profit on every sale, and you're fine. If you're going through Diamond, you have to get your price point down, or else you can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I do print runs of 1,000 generally, and they sell in like 3 or 4 years, but that's enough to get me going for a while. So yes, if you print 5,000, you might have a lot of books for a long time, unless you're doing really, really well, which is fantastic. But yeah, and Kickstarter might be a good way to tell how many of your readers are going to buy books, and then you can adjust how many you print, because you wouldn't print it until you get the money, theoretically. So
yeah, and you could say a few hundred for just doing cons or whatever, giving them away, whatever you want to do with them. The whole point of Kickstarter is you want to walk away, with your print run paid for, and then anything you sell is just gravy. So if you could do that, then Kickstarter's totally worth it. Even if you get stuck with 2,000 comics and they're paid for, every one you sell is going to be profit. If you can't store them, give them away. It's only going to help your, webcomic. People will come. I think we got a wrap.
yeah. Any final questions?
Thank you. I assume you got a table too, right?
Yeah. We're in the merchant room. Yep.
Yeah, we'll be there tomorrow. You can.